Also, if you need the closed captions, they should be enabled, so you can just turn them on in case. If you can please go ahead and mute yourself for the moment while we get started. So my name is Luis Diego. I'm from DCO, the Country Business Strategy branch, and I'll be moderating the meeting. And we also have the colleagues from the ITM, the Information and Technology Management from UNDP in Copenhagen, who will be leading all the technical aspects of the meeting. So first off, congratulations to everyone for being selected in this project. We think it's very exciting. And I'll start out giving a brief introduction of what the project is and why it's being promoted. And then we'll go with the ITM colleagues who will give a little more technical description of what the project is. We'll go over the steps that you need to kind of follow in order to complete the project. And then we'll answer any questions from your end. So as you may know, this is part of the High Impact Common Services. A lot of you have seen this already. I'll just go over it for sake of the recording. So there are common services that we found that have a high impact, whether it's a good practice or related to SDG, or they have a high quality improvement or high cost avoidance. In this case, we found that they have not only a good practice, but also related to renewable energy, environmental KPIs, and a social impact. And what we've seen with them is that even though they have a lot of benefits, a lot of the times they stagnate or they don't get implemented because of lack of funding. So the idea with this project was to be able to fund select UNCTs to be able to have a business case where they can really evaluate the cost and benefit analysis. There's a lot of, I think, sometimes belief that these solutions are very expensive, but we think that if you have the business case and you have the tools of how long it will take you to kind of break even and how much it would actually cost you and save you to have these solutions, then it could be implemented faster. Perhaps funds can be secured from donors, or perhaps it could really unlock the potential of these services. These are some of the benefits of the high impact common services in general. So by promoting them or being able to highlight them in the business operation strategy, we believe that the benefits can be maximized and the quality improvement can be increased, and the system-wide data that we're using from the BOSS can be promoted in other UNCTs that perhaps are not fully utilizing these opportunities. We've seen that there's several ways that, at least from the business operation strategy and the country business strategy, we've wanted to promote these high impact common services. A lot of you have been in the dedicated webinars, been offering dedicated expert support from the colleagues, depending on each one of the common services. The common services are also tagged as highly recommended. And there's been also different documents to help you facilitate the implementation. Yet again, because of fundings, a lot of the times it gets stuck. So that's what this project intends to do, at least with environmental and solar solutions. The way that, before I hand it off to the ITM colleagues, the way that these the UNCTs were selected, just for your knowledge, was well, we narrowed it down first with 1 UN houses. So UNCTs that have a permanent lease situation with their premises and that they have a substantial common premise. We then looked at the BOSS, so the Business Operations Strategy Online, told us which countries had already selected environmental sustainable practices in their common premises. And then we also looked at the ITM kind of database, seeing which countries had already worked with them and already had this business case, so it wouldn't make sense to have them. We also looked at the operation capacity of each one of the country teams. So we did rule out all the countries that were undergoing CBO phase 1, so the common back office, because we know it's overwhelming, it's another project, and we don't want to do that. We want to facilitate the implementation of these services and not make it extra work. So with that, I'll hand it over to Agatha, who's going to be leading the presentation from the ITM side. Agatha, over to you. Let me know if you want to share your slides on your end.
Thank you, Luis. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. It's very nice to meet you all. So we're going to just start quickly reminding you about step 1 and step 2 that we're going to be working with in this project. Basically, we as Green Energy team that is going to be cooperating with you on the project specifically has established process that we work with while working on PV projects. And that is the 7-step process, which basically covers the whole process of procuring a PV system for a specific country office. And it is going from the very beginning of trying to get any information about what is the situation in the given premises, up until the end of the installation, and then the operation and maintenance, where we follow up with the project after the installation. We make sure that it is working correctly. We check the monitoring of the system. But as I said, in this project, we focus on the 2 first steps, which is energy audit and assessment using Internet of Things, and the business case. What we're going to be focusing on in these steps is getting all the possible information about your premises that we can. We also have a specific process for this, specific forms that maybe need to be filled out. As you may imagine, the functioning of premises, how they look, how they're built, is very different from one place to another. So then we need to be very individual when getting information about the specific place. And this is also why, because we cannot be on the premises most of the time, we get the information remotely, and we try to follow up with this information. We use some devices that are called PCMMs, or grid analyzers, that we're going to be installing in your premises, where we can track very much in detail what is the electricity consumption in the given place. And with this data, we can get a lot of information on what is the, how does the electricity consumption look like, how does it change from day to night, during the day, between weekends and weekdays. How does it change from season to season? All of this is going to impact how the system is going to be benefiting your office. So that is very useful information for us to see how does this electricity consumption profile change. It can also be used for many other things. As you can imagine, data is power. It can also be used by your office to track the consumption yourself. If we, for example, install many of these devices that are going to be separating the loads, for example, seeing office by office, floor by floor, you can see, for example, where does your perhaps high electricity bill come from? Where's all of this electricity spent? Perhaps you can try to implement some energy efficiency measures. Perhaps we may be able to give you some tips about this as well. And then you can keep following, once you purchase these devices, they will be staying there. So you can keep following up with how does it change with time. Perhaps it is going down or up. You can actually see what is happening in your office and where, like I said, is the electricity consumption coming from. This is. Yes?
Sorry, let me know if you want me to go through these slides or if you want to use your own as well.
I think if you have any slides about the business case, we can go through them and then I can share my presentation.
Sure.
Agatha, do you see this the screen that Luis is displaying?
Yes, yes, I can see it.
Is he on the right slide? That's what he means. Now, if you need him to move, just let him know so that
Yeah.
what you say, what is on the screen is synchronized.
Thank you. So moving on to the next part is the green energy missions. We're also gonna be going on missions to some of your premises. We separate the missions in two different parts. It is the energy audit and assessment, where we can actually do the audit ourselves, which of course can be very useful if we can see what is happening on the premises ourselves, see perhaps notice some things that you wouldn't even think about sharing, but it turns out that they're important for us. And then we also have training and capacity building, where we present some more details about how our projects developed. We train you in using some of the softwares that we're using, and we give you in general a better overview of how does solar energy work, how do our systems operate, and how can you operate them in your office as well. You can go to the next one, Louis. Yes, that is exactly what I was talking about.
And let me know, I can jump to the business case as well.
Yeah, we can jump to the business case if you have it. So based on all of this information that we get from you, from our conversations, from the PCMMs, as well as from the preliminary site survey that we're going to be discussing in a second, we developed a business case, which is a document that is basically presenting a design of the system that we would recommend for your country office based on all of the information that we gathered, but also based on what you told us in our conversations about your preferences, what is your goal, what would you like this system to do in your premises. Is it saving of money? Is it just environmental aspects? Based on that, we can tailor our proposal to whatever is the goal. What we do is we basically simulate first where the panels can be placed based on the overview of the premises. We try to find the best location for the panels. We try to see how many of the panels we can actually fit. Sometimes we have some space constraints which don't allow us perhaps to make the system as big as we would like it to be. We try to simulate whether the panels in this location will be working correctly, if they will not be shaded, if they will perform as well as we would like them to. And then we also do an assessment of the whole system. So basically we try to assess, there's this simulation software that we use, which is called Homer, which basically takes all of the electricity sources that are in the given premises, and it simulates how the system would work hour by hour. So how much solar energy we're expecting to get from the size of the system that we are proposing, how much electricity from the grid we would like to get in this time. Do we have to use generators or not? So all of this is simulated for the whole year, hour by hour, and then based on that we can see how how the system is performing. Are we saving any money? Are we actually saving any electricity? Are we reaching the goals that we would like to reach? For example, if in our conversations it turns out that the main goal is not to use the generator anymore, we can see whether we need to use this generator, or do we need to try to put a bigger system in place. So yeah, what I'm trying to explain is that the design is pretty detailed, which also helps in the next steps where when we go to the procurement phase, the vendor doesn't need to design the system from scratch. We already present a very specific requirements. We know what kind of size of a system we would like, potential locations, and so on and so forth. So that is also fast tracking the next steps in our process. I think I can share my presentation now, Louis, if that's possible.
Is it about the preliminary site survey form?
Exactly.
Is it all right if I share the timeline before that?
Sure, no problem.
Just really quickly, colleagues, basically the next step. So as you saw, it's going to give you the way I describe it, and I know it's not the technical side of it, but kind of an X-ray vision of the energy consumption in your premise, and be able to give solutions and what those solutions would look like. So it's very, very data-driven. It's taking the actual data from your premises. It's not, circumstantial or potential. It's actual measurements. And this is what it will look like as far as timeline. I know the funding may be something that you're wondering, and you might ask us, and I'll say it a couple of times. I'll start saying it here. So it's going to be fully funded, the business case, by DCO. And the funding is going to go through ITM. So there's no funding that needs to go to your country office to perform this. It's all going to be taken care of once you fill out the survey form that Agatha is going to speak about in a few minutes. Then that would be kind of the commitment of the country office to be able to have a signatory or somebody that can sign on the project and committing on following these steps that I'm going to comment. So the first step is the energy assessment, which Agatha already spoke about. Next immediate steps would be to fill the preliminary site survey form, which we sent in the email invite of this meeting. And Agatha is going to go in more detail because it's a detailed document, so we can ask some questions and go into that. After that, you can be able to determine what package of the Internet of Things sensors, or the ECMM sensors that Agatha also mentioned. And then after that, we would ship, and the ITM team will help you install those sensors in your premises. After that starts the actual assessment or audit of energy. So it takes, I'll go over the timelines in a second, but it's basically gathering the load and the consumption data, clarify any data that has been received, and then the ITM team will procure or produce the business case. Agatha mentioned about trainings, both virtual and on-site. Some of the UNCTs are going to be selected based on the data capture and the capacity of the team to do this and to benefit from this. Some of the teams, so there's about 15 UNCTs that have been selected for the business case, and about half of those would be selected either for an online, and a few of them, depending on the complexity also, if it's a much more complex come on premise that could benefit from it, some of them will have an actual in-person on-site mission. And what the mission would look like would be a couple of steps of defining the objectives, meeting, looking over all the logistics, and then deploying the mission, and again, having the feedback and the landing of the project. So this is going to be defined along the way. We still don't know that until we have a little bit more information, and along with the ITM team, we'll be in touch with your team to see if this makes sense for you, and if you're willing to take on, because it's, as you can see, because it is an on-site or virtual training, it takes a little bit more commitment of time from your end. But for everybody, definitely we'll have the energy assessment and the business case, and what that will look like is, ideally, the preliminary site survey form will be filled within a week from now, so next week. And after that, we'll have a week to determine the packages that will be sent to you. Following that, there'll be a 2-week period where the sensors get shipped and installed. These are approximate dates, and we know it's a very tight deadline, and we're open to kind of work with you. And we know it's also coming to the close of the year, so that also affects. But we need to implement the project ideally by December. So this is what it will look like, and we will share these slides with you as well, so you can have them as reference. After that, there will be a period of 4 weeks of measuring, so almost a month of measuring the data, and have a week to kind of clarify or just look over anything that needs to be adjusted before submitting the business case for you. So with this, I'll hand it back to Agatha so she can cover what the immediate next step is with the preliminary site survey form. So Agatha, over to you.
It's just I cannot share my screen. I think you have to make me a presenter.
Sure. You should be able to do it now.
Perfect, thank you.
And in a moment also we'll open up for questions that you may have regarding the project.
Hope you can see the presentation now.
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. So like we were mentioning before, I'm going to present a little bit more in detail the document that we shared with you that we would like you to fill in, and it's the preliminary site survey, which is basically a document where we gather all of the information about your premises that we can. And it is starting with quite basic information, which is basically the address, contact details of a person that is going to be responsible for the project, so that we always know who to reach out to in case we have any questions or we want to set up a meeting. And then we move to another section about goals. And this is something that I was also mentioning previously. This is also something that we can discuss on meetings. However, having this information here gives us a little bit, gives us a hint on while we design the system, we can know which direction to move towards and what is the goal that we are trying to reach while designing the system.
Can I comment on this?
Sure.
Okay. So it needs to be put in order of priority for all of them, or multiple answers for this one here?
So basically we have 4 points here, which is cover the critical load and reduce energy dependence. That is, for example, in case there is a country office which has very poor grid connection, and we don't want to depend on this grid anymore, and we want some critical equipment to be powered by PV systems. Then there's another one, which is electricity bills cost reduction, which is pretty straightforward, which is we want the PV to help us save money.
Okay, sorry, Agatha. I see in the brackets there it answers my question in the brackets. That's fine. We can continue.
Yeah. Okay. But basically, yeah, there's another one talking about the decrease in CO2 and then increase reliability. So again, we want our office to have a more reliable power source, and then we can put a number from 1 to 4 depending on which one is the most and which is the less relevant for our country office. Then the next part is physical information, and this is where we gather information about the buildings, especially about the buildings where we want to install the panels. And you could think that maybe we are only interested in how much electricity are the buildings consuming, but there's also a list of other information that are very relevant for us, mostly because we try to estimate the placing of the panels. There's usually three different types of mounting structures of where we place the panels, and that is either the rooftop, on the ground, or on the parking. And that, of course, varies from one site to another, depending on first the possibilities of how much space do we have, but also on our preferences. So usually we try to place the panels on the roof, ideally on the roof of the building that is going to be powered by these panels. This is the cheapest option. However, we need to make sure that the rooftop is in a good condition so that it can withstand the weight of the panels, and that there's also access for cleaning to this rooftop. And then there is another option, which is ground mounted, and it is the second cheapest one. And there is also an option to make the panels a parking, add a whole structure to it, or perhaps put it on an existing structure already, so that we can use it as either a parking for cars or just an area for people that is shaded where they can have a break, for example. However, as you can imagine, this option needs some extra civil work so that the structure is built, so that we make sure that there is good foundations and that it's stable, and so on and so forth. So this is why we need the information about how the building is structured, whether the structure of the roof is good, but we also need the information about the surroundings. We're not only interested in the office where the PV panels will be placed, but also about what is around it. And that is because while we try to estimate what will be the best location to have the PV panels, we also try to minimize the loss of performance that is due to shading. And that can be because of a lot of things. It can be because of some trees that are around. For example, you can see a screenshot from our simulation here, where there's a bunch of trees around one side of the building, which is why we try to place the panels on the other side. And you can see on the right, it is basically a simulation of how much will these panels be shaded throughout the whole year. And while in this case, there was enough space to put it on this side, we have, for example, situations like this where we have a tall building next to our office or the building where we are putting the panels, which is going to be affecting on how they're working quite substantially. So this is why, I will just go back to this part of site survey. If you want to, you can open the document. You should have it in the meeting invitation, and you can scroll through it if that helps you. So basically, this is the part about building details, and we are mentioning there also to upload some pictures or videos for us. So the more of those we have, the better, so that we can have a little bit better of an overview of how the surroundings look like. Maybe your neighbor has a very tall building that is going to be causing shading. So all of this information is very useful for us to have. Another thing that I wanted to mention, there's also a part of the preliminary site survey talking about the roof. It is also very important for us, as we try to use Google Maps and see how the whole premises look like from above. But again, pictures are way more detailed and way more updated. So it is also important for us to know about anything that may be on the roof that first of all can be causing shading, like for example, there is some satellites, some ACs. So yeah, again, that can be causing shading to the panels, but also we know then that we cannot place the panels in this place if there is something else already installed in there. So that is the part about the buildings. Next part in the preliminary site survey is about the electrical installation. We need this basically for two reasons. One is so that when we know where everything in the premises is located, we can sort of try to estimate where all of the electricity sources that you have are going to be placed. Is it going to be far from each other? For example, we can have a distribution board in one place, then a generator in another place, and then our office that we want to power in another place. So it's good for us to know beforehand how far everything is from each other. And we will also need this to estimate the package of the PCMMs or of the IoT devices that we were mentioning that would suit your premises the best. And that will be based on how the electrical installation is done in the given space. There is another colleague from our team that will be assisting us in this specific task, as this is the first thing that we need to do. We need to do it quite quickly so that we can purchase the IoT devices as soon as possible and they can get to your premises as soon as possible. So I will give the floor to Ioannis, and maybe you can give a little bit more tips on what to look for and what kind of information would be the most useful for us while trying to decide which PCMMs we need to install.
Thanks, Agatha. Hi, everyone. This is Ioannis from Green Energy team. So yeah, a few tips about selecting the right package of PCMM and make sure that we move forward smoothly. Just please, if you have an electric supply diagram, the more detailed, the better, to provide it to us so we can take an overall picture of the premises. Please let us know if there are additional loads that have been added or major changes in the diagram. It's good to let us know. The point is like to have one supply diagram that really reflects the situation on the ground right now. We will install power monitoring devices called grid analyzers to the grid output and also the genset if you have. And then we'll move with some simpler devices called PCMMs in the premises, in the distribution panels of the buildings. That depends to the critical loads that you might have or in each floor, depends to what you feel above in the site survey. But as I said, it's good to have a supply diagram which is updated. If there are major changes, let us know. And also, it would be very helpful to take some pictures of the distribution panels and also the cabling in the grid input close enough so we can also see the size and the space available in the distribution panels. So it's good to have as close as possible so we can see the whole panel and define better the PCMM package. These two things I think are the most important to make sure there are no uncertainties in the selection of the right PCMM devices that fit to your panels. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ioannis. The thing that I wanted to mention as well is that we're going to be having meetings with you one by one. So then, of course, we can discuss a bit more in detail if you perhaps have a diagram, but you are not sure how to read it or where it would be best to put the PCMMs. We're, of course, here to support you, and we're going to discuss it on the individual meetings that we will have. So next part is basically summing up all of the electricity sources that you have in your premises at the moment. So there is a space for grids, generators, PV systems, and batteries. Of course, we are aware that you might not have all of them. Maybe there is only grid or only generators. It is good then if you just give us a note saying that this is not available or this is not installed in our premises, so that we know what is there, what is functioning, what is not, and so on and so forth. So for example, going to the grid, it is very important for us to know how many outages there are, how often they happen. If you have any electricity bills that you can share with us, it can be also very helpful. So while developing the business case, we won't have months of data from the PCMMs. We'll only have perhaps a couple of weeks. So then if we have the electricity bills, we can maybe estimate the changes that we can see throughout the year. We can estimate how much you pay for the electricity at the moment and so on. Then when it comes to the generators, it is of course good to know how often and how much you're using them, what the generators are powering. If you can also share the pictures of the generator or the generators that you have, that's also very useful for us to know the models, how big they are, and so on and so forth. Then if you have any PV systems that may be functioning or not, that is also good to know for us. And the same goes for batteries. Why we need to know that is not only, as you can imagine, to try to create a system that will sort of have all of these sources cooperating together, but also to estimate the benefits that the solar system could bring to you. So basically knowing what kind of sources you're using at the moment, we can estimate what kind of benefits you can foresee in the future if you install the given system that we propose to you. So for example, if you have a grid and generator, which is usually the most common setup that we see in UN premises, based on the grid emissions in the given country and based on the size of the generator, we can estimate what are going to be the environmental savings. So basically how much CO2 emissions we can save putting in place this given PV system. And knowing the grid tariffs or perhaps feed-in tariffs, so that is when your PV system is producing more than you are consuming, and then you can basically sell the rest of the electricity back to the grid. Knowing that, we can estimate how much financial savings we can see. Same goes for the generator. Knowing the size of the genset, cost of it, and knowing how often it is used, we can estimate how often it is going to be used and then see how much we can save on the diesel and so on. So again, the more detailed information we have, the more accurate estimations we can give to you. The next part is about the technical room, and that is basically a room where we can store the equipment. If you have a room like this in your premises that can be used to store batteries and inverters, please let us know. It is also going to help us estimate the costs better, as if we need to store the equipment, we need to store it in a place that is going to have the right temperatures so that we are sure that the system can last longer. In case we don't have a room where we can place all of the equipment in the premises already, we basically use containers, which you can see on the right, which have all of the equipment assembled inside. Also have ACs that are going to cool down all of the equipment that is there, and that can be placed outdoors. However, as you can imagine, this solution is a little bit more expensive. So again, if we know beforehand if you have a chance to use one of the rooms or not, we can estimate the cost of the system better accordingly. So now a little bit more overview on how to share the all of the files and the preliminary site survey with us. So each project will have a folder for all the files that can be used throughout the whole project. Sometimes we have to share some other files with you. Sometimes you need to share some files with us. And that is basically where we store all of it and where we both, from both sides, have access to it. If you maybe saw the preliminary site survey document already, there's also a folder called Green Energy Gallery that is also linked in there. And then each one of the projects will also have a separate folder where you can upload all of the pictures, videos, perhaps any electricity bills or any data sheets of generator maybe that you have, any information that you would like to share with us. I will also just mention quickly the next steps. We will be meeting with you one by one. And we have 4 colleagues that are going to be working on the projects, and we basically have a focal point that you can see here in the table for each project. Perhaps if we don't have all of the projects listed here, we are going to share with you an updated table. But basically, we just wanted to let you know that we are going to be reaching out to you. The colleagues that are listed here are going to be reaching out to specific focal points on the project side so that we can arrange a meeting and discuss the IoT packages as well as the preliminary site survey. Thank you so much.
I got a quick question. So a lot of the information is quite technical. Who would you suggest to engage from each one of the UNCTs to help them do this? Whoever is closest to an electrician or has the connection to electrical grid, or somebody else that you've used for other UNCTs?
Exactly. If you could engage an electrician, also that, or anybody technical that has a bit of information about electrical appliances, it will be very helpful, especially for choosing the IoT devices and for getting the electrical diagrams. Maybe somebody who's taking care of the premises can help as well. If not, we can always guide you, and basically we can also extract a lot of information just based on photos or videos. So if you share a lot of those, we can. It's already very helpful for us.
Great, thank you so much. There have been a couple of questions before starting with those and giving you the chance to ask the questions directly. I know Shatiso Nieti is here. He's the team leader for the green energy team. Shatiso, I didn't introduce you. I know you've already shared a little bit, but if you want to say anything before opening up for questions.
No, I think that's fine. The only thing that I may want to emphasize is, it's key that we get as much information at this stage. I know it looks like a lot, and for sure it's a lot for the colleagues on the ground to provide, but that's how we can build a strong foundation. We don't want to have a weak foundation, because that actually is where we determine the durability and the resilience of the systems that we may eventually build. If we have a strong foundation and we have all the precise information as much as possible, then that gives us a very strong foundation for us to do something that's durable. These things are meant to last 20 to 30 years, so it's quite an investment that will be put in that, and it will be key for whoever the focal point on the ground is to put some little bit of time and thought into this. and not just maybe to browse over it and provide something. So just to emphasize the need for doing it correctly from the word go. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Shatiso. So we'll like to open it up for questions. Go ahead and raise your hand if you'd like to ask a question. I'll go over the ones that have been asked already just for clarification. So there was a question about whether this whole project will be done by December, only including the business case, and yes. Until December, ideally it would be the assessment, which includes the shipping and installation of the PCMM or the ECMM process of measuring energy consumption, measuring, monitoring, and management. I always get the M's wrong, but I know I'm getting all of them somehow in a different order. And then the trainings and the on-site and virtual trainings will happen probably next year, so somewhere between January and March. The panels will not be installed in this part of the project. It's only the business case. So it's to help you set the foundation so that you can evaluate whether it makes sense to do the solution, which solution, how much it will cost you, what does it mean in benefits. So it's really just setting you up to take that next step or evaluate if it's a good decision to do that. Ideally, what we would like to do with this project also was thinking that this would facilitate you to get the fundings for the solar panels, whether it's from a donor or from different sources within your budget, but to be able to have a clearer picture of what it would mean. So there was a question about, I think Choni was asking about Bhutan. They have a particular already installation of some solar panels. I think we had shared that through the communication, but Choni, if you want to share the situation briefly, and maybe the ITM colleagues can say if it makes sense for you to do this business case scenario. Choni, let us know if you're there. If not, we can move on, and at any moment, feel free to raise your hand.
But we can still respond to this, though. I mean, when we have an already installed system, that doesn't stop us from doing something for that particular premises. You will know most of the systems, of course, they just cover a certain percentage of the power requirements. So this could be an opportunity to even increase that percentage. It may be from 30% to 50 or 70%, of green energy. So there is still a room for sure to kind of expand or even improve the performance of the existing system and expand the capacity. So yeah, there is nothing out of range here. That's why we need to collect the information, and part of it is actually what do you have in terms of solar systems. If you have something, we need to look at that and see whether there's something that can be done. Most often than not, we have something that we can do to improve that.
Okay, great. I guess the only case where it wouldn't make sense if they've already worked with your office, with the green energy team in doing a business case recently, and then it wouldn't make sense, which we've kind of done our best to filter that, but in case that has been done in the common premise, then please let us know, correct?
Yes, and even where we have done also at times, it might be a system that's limited by budget. So we cut it so that we fit into the budget. But yeah, if it's done to the maximum, then that's fine. It wouldn't make sense to do it again. Yeah.
Thank you, Shatiso. Choni was writing that she wasn't able to unmute herself. It's supposed to be enabled, but I'll check. If not, I'll make you a presenter, which I think it's the easiest way. There was another question also about the PSS, or the preliminary site survey form. It's only needed for the common premise where the business case is going to be created. So the business case only covers one common premise. Ideally, it would be your 1 UN house. If you have a case that you would like to do it in another common premise, you'd have to bring that up with us as soon as possible and let us know why it would make more sense, and we can evaluate that. So let me see, I think somebody also had raised their hand, but I don't see it anymore. Choni, I think I just made you presenter, so you should be able to unmute yourself. I don't know why you weren't able before, but please go ahead. Okay. So colleagues, if there is any other question, we'll be here for a few minutes. Go ahead and raise your hand or ask it here. We will be reaching. Yes, Agatha?
Sorry, I think there's a question about the roof. Basically, we don't estimate that usually with some kind of construction engineer or anything like that. Based on what we see, we can see if the roof is in a good condition. If you know, it's very old and we can see that there's some damages done to it, we would like not to risk, and maybe there's some kind of reinforcement works that would need to be done. Usually based on photos and based on just estimation with looking at it, we try to see whether it looks good or not. In case it doesn't, then we try to place the panels somewhere else. In case they need to be placed on the roof, and we are not sure about whether it will be able to support the panels or not, then we ask the vendors to assess it themselves in the RFQ. But most of just regularly done roofs are able to withstand that kind of weight.
There are some cases where we need to actually engage a structural engineer before, well in advance, but where we don't necessarily feel it's necessary to incur that extra cost, we have another cushion, at least from the vendors themselves. They've got experience. They've installed their international vendors anyway that we deal with. They've installed these things in thousands of roofs, I should say. Maybe I'm exaggerating, but I mean, they've installed these things in a whole bunch of roofs, and they have really kind of first-hand. Some of the vendors actually have structural engineers, so when they come, they incorporate that service as part of the whole package. But yeah, I mean, the vendors have got good experience when we come to that stage as well, to verify that the roof is good enough.
Great, thank you, Shati. So Choni, I see you were able to unmute. You may go ahead if you'd like to elaborate. I see you're unmuted, but perhaps we can't hear you from our end. So colleagues, if there isn't any other question, we're almost out of time. We had scheduled half an hour extra in case there were a lot of questions, because we knew it was a very technical form to fill out. But we will be reaching out to you to see if you have any questions, and if you would like another meeting with your technical lead or whoever is going to be involved filling out the survey form. As you saw, there's one green energy team engineer that's going to be assigned to your UNCT, and we will be reaching out in case you do have any questions. As we mentioned, ideally we need this form by next week in order to stay on the tight deadline and be able to move along with the next steps. If there's anything else from the green energy team that you would like to share. I see there's one question that came in last minute.
Yeah, I think we only have one other question here that I see from, oh, you have responded to that. Okay, yeah, sorry, that's fine. Thank you.
So I'll go ahead and say it for the colleagues that would only be listening to this recording, but the question is, following the assessment and evaluation of the business case, will the recommendations on the way forward to achieve efficiencies in terms of consumption and CO2 footprint reduction, will there be recommendations given? And yes, the question was, yes, this is part of the business case. We'll help you be able to project what will be the efficiencies gained with the solar panels. And even without the solar panels, I believe there will also be recommendations done, right? I'll check this with the team, that you could do to increase efficiencies even without any installation. So there will be some efficiencies gained from the project, regardless of the actions that you take. Correct?
We have some general recommendations. Go ahead.
Exactly. Go ahead. Go ahead, Agatha.
We have some general recommendations in each business case. When it comes to more detailed ones, we will usually need to do a more detailed PCMM assessment so that we can differentiate it. For sure, when it comes to energy audits, there's always a lot of recommendations that we come with. When it comes to getting the information remotely, it is a little bit more tricky. That's why we need more data to assess this situation. But we can also offer you different kinds of devices, such as, for example, AC sensors that help to optimize the use of ACs, which is usually a big part of the consumption of the offices. And also based, like I was saying, just based on seeing your consumption with the PCMMs, you can try to follow it yourself and see what is causing the peaks in consumption in your office.
Shatiso, did you want to add anything?
No, I think that's it, as Agatha said, like when you look at the consumption, it's difficult for us sitting remotely to say, hey, this fridge is consuming more, but on the ground, you can tell, okay, this circuit has got a few loads, but somehow it's consuming a lot. That can help you to eliminate things like maybe an old refrigerator, which is now not using energy optimally. So such things, of course, that can be done. That's why the installation of the sensors that we are going to put on the ground, they are not just going to be up to us producing a business case. They will outlive and still benefit the country offices beyond just having a business case.
Okay, I have a quick question, kind of what happens after the business case. So we have these IoT devices installed in the common premise of each UNCT. What happens afterwards, and how can each UNCT kind of keep using the data that they're receiving to leverage some kind of benefits, regardless of whether they install a solar solution or not?
So like Shatiso was just mentioning, knowing where these PCMM devices are installed and what they're measuring, you can have a live access to a monitoring portal that is basically going to be showing you all different kinds of information. You can see the consumption live, so how much you're consuming at the moment in the office. You can also see it sort of stacked daily or monthly, yearly. You can see, how this consumption fluctuates. So based on that and based on how many of these devices you have installed, you can see where is the biggest consumption coming from, or perhaps when. Maybe, I don't know, during the lunch break, you suddenly have a peak, although nobody is working, and it is because you're using, let's say, 10 microwave at the same time, which is causing a huge consumption peak in a given hour. And so just basically observing how this consumption is changing, you can see what kind of changes can be done in your office as well.
Yeah, maybe just to add, or maybe I'll be repeating some of the things in terms of use cases. You can have these sensors to benchmark yourselves. For instance, okay, this month we consumed so much, and then you put some energy efficiency measures into place, and then you can go back and say, how much have we benefited from putting these energy measures in place. So you can use that, to benchmark yourself. And then also you can use these sensors to identify power leakages. There's places where you may not obviously see there's a problem related to power. But if all of a sudden you see, is something going up like that, to reach unusual levels, then you must know there's something wrong in this circuit. A circuit will give you the history, and all of a sudden there is a sharp rise in consumption. That will ring a bell. There must be something wrong in this circuit. So the electrician on the ground can work on those power leakages and address them more proactively. And finally, from what I'm just thinking of right now is most of the multi-agency premises, when the bill comes from the power supplier, it's just one big figure. And then they do, to apportion now, they may do a head count, to say how many people are in that agency and how many people are in that agency, and then we prorate it like that. But with these sensors, you can know exactly how much each agency has consumed. So when you apportion the costs, it's not just a head count for you to be able to just divide, but you know exactly how much they consumed. And then, because 10 people can consume more than 15 people, but when you just do a head count, you will say 15 consumed more. So it depends really on the usage. So this can also help you in doing cost apportioning. This is just a few use cases. I mean, there's a whole lot.
Exactly. I wanted to add just one more thing, because for the grid and the generator, we will be using another device, which is measuring more than just the consumption. It is also measuring what is the quality of the power that is coming from your grid supplier, which, for example, in Tanzania, we found out a bunch of information about the electricity coming from the grid and some problems that are coming with it as well, so that we are in talking with the power supplier at the moment about it. Moreover, in case there's a problem, for example, with the solar system, in case you install it in the future, then we can say that the problem is not caused by the grid, because we have data to support it, but it is caused by something not functioning in the system, for example. And the same goes for the generator monitoring. Perhaps you're spending a lot of money for the diesel to power the generator, but then knowing how much you're producing, maybe it's not worth it. Maybe it's the generator is not efficient. Maybe it is too big. So basically, you will be able to see how much electricity you're getting from each source as well.
Great, thank you, Agatha and Shati. So I think with that, we'll close the meeting for now, and we will be reaching out to you to make sure that everything's going well with the preliminary site survey form and the continued steps. So we're here to support and to make this really smooth and seamless for you, and ideally to have the benefits translated into your common premise or one UN house. Thank you very much to the Green Energy team for joining. Thank you to the regional BOSS coordinators also. I see, Luigi, you turned on your video. I'm not sure if you want to say something or just show us a picture of Bangkok on the back. Salman is also, I think, connected as well as other ones. So we'll be supporting and helping you implement this, even though the tight deadline is obviously there. So thank you very much, and we look forward to staying in touch. Have a great afternoon, evening, or day.
Thank you, Luis, and thank you, colleagues.
Thank you, and nice to see Luigi after a long time. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, the Green team from Nigeria. Bye. Have a good rest of the day.